Hello, it's Graham here from Tutor to You, and welcome to our Paper 3 warm-up live stream. So things are slightly different today, as you can see, and judging by the comments in the chat window. First of all, to address the comment, where's the old music gone? Time is running out. Well, it's ran out. So unfortunately, Jim can't be with us today. A close family member is very poorly, so it is just me. In terms of the AQA Paper 3 warm-up, Jim did a recording last night that is on our YouTube channel, so you can watch that. There will be no AQA Paper 3 live stream. We were meant to do the Edexcel Paper 3 live stream yesterday, but I had a power cut, so I couldn't get logged on. So we're here. I'm here. You're here. So all we're going to do is a few warm-up questions for Paper 3, do a quick overview of the paper, touch very quickly on 8-mark questions. I hope you don't get too emotional because it is our last live stream together before you sit Paper 3 tomorrow and fly the Tutor to You nest. And I will try and do any questions in the chat window regarding the AQA live stream. That was recorded yesterday, so you can go on the YouTube channel and watch the Paper 3 warm-up. That's recorded, so you will not miss out. So we're going to start as we normally do for the last time in this exam series. It's the big reveal. So under the question mark is the name of a brand this time, and behind each number is a clue that alludes to the name of that brand. So can we have a little clue number 1, John, please? So John, I've got John in the background. So this business, or brand even, was founded in 1921. So if you're sat there thinking, I know a brand, but it was founded in 1920, well, unfortunately, it's not the one we are thinking of. What do we think? It's not Greg's. I would guess it's related to Paper 3, which is the fashion industry. I would be hazarding a guess at that. Should we have a little clue number 2, please? So originally a small family-owned leather shop. So obviously makes leather goods, or did at the time. And I don't believe it. We've got some correct answers in already. I think Ben was in there first. Should we have a little clue number 3, John? So it now has around 528 stores. Clue number 4 is luxury fashion house. Yeah, lots of people in the chat window now getting it. It's not Barber. It's certainly not Clark's. It's Italian. It's a luxury fashion house. It's an Italian luxury fashion house. It's not Louis Vuitton, and it's not Next. It is indeed. It's Gucci. So, well done, everyone, for having a go at that. So we're going to just do a few MCQs, a few knowledge-based activities, and then a quick overview of the paper. Nothing more, 20 minutes, and answer a few questions. So then you can get on with some revision later on this afternoon. So we've got 4 statements on screen. All we'd like you to do is identify which one of those statements is false. So is it A, is it B, is it C, is it D? Now remember, growth was specifically mentioned on the Paper 3 pre-release. So I'd be making sure I'm just familiar with the benefits of growth and some of the downsides or problems associated with growth. So I think the majority are going for B. Should we have a look at the correct answer, John? Yeah, it is indeed B. So an appreciation of the pound against the dollar will make imports from the US to the UK more expensive. That's false. It will make them cheaper. Now, again, just be familiar with exchange rates because we're talking about clothing manufacturing. So maybe some clothing manufacturers source their cotton, their fabric for overseas. Subsequently, you may need to be familiar with exchange rates. So let's have a look at the next one. So gearing, what is the correct formula to calculate gearing? Now remember, there'll be no standalone calculations on Paper 3, for there are no 4-mark questions. That's not to say you may not get some calculations as part of maybe a 12-marker or a 20-mark question. So is it A, is it B, is it C, is it D? I think it's definitely got something to do with non-current liabilities and capital employed. I think so, judging by the possible answers. So lots coming in. We're sort of split between A and B. It's definitely one of those on screen. We've got a comedian in saying it's E. Always makes me laugh, that one. So shall we reveal the correct answer, John? It is indeed A, non-current liabilities divided by capital employed. Remember, the capital employed is non-current liabilities plus total equity. Okay, next MCQ. So which of the following methods of production gives employees the most variety in tasks and is most likely to increase motivation? Is it batch? Is it cell? Is it job? Is it flow? So again, I would just be familiar with the relative benefits and downsides of the different methods of production, given the fact that we're talking about clothing manufacturing. So there may be a question potentially on manufacturing. There may not be a question on manufacturing. Who knows? What do we think? So Wheel Worried 500 thinks it's C, and that's a really good answer. Shall we reveal what the correct answer is? It is indeed job production. So job production is typically making, if we're talking about the clothing industry, it will be making maybe handmade clothes from start to finish. A lot of clothes are made either floor production or batch production. So great stuff, everyone. Shall we look at the next MCQ, John? So it's one of our famous two-statement questions. Why are they famous? Because they have two statements, and each statement is either true or false. All you have to do is work out whether the statements are true or false. Sorry, yeah, there will be two 20 markers. The structure of the paper is similar to paper 1 and paper 2. We will cover that shortly. But yeah, there'll be two 20 markers. So creating and setting up a business is a characteristic. I'll start that again. Creating and setting up a business is a characteristic of an entrepreneur. Now remember, entrepreneurship, again, specifically mentioned on the pre-release. So I'd make sure I'm familiar with the three areas of entrepreneurship on the spec. And statement 2, the formula to calculate the asset test ratio is current liabilities minus inventory divided by current assets. Is that true or is that false? What do we think? So it's causing a little bit of a confusion. We've got all possible answers here. So again, Alex is asking when's the AQA warm-up. There'll be no AQA warm-up, unfortunately. Jim's dealing with a family illness, but it was recorded last night and it is on our website. Over 3,000 people so far have watched it, so you can watch that online. So what do we think? So the majority are going for D, but we have had all letters out there. Shall we have a look at the answer, John? It is indeed D. So creating and setting up a business is not a characteristic of an entrepreneur. It is a role of an entrepreneur. So really make sure you know the difference between a role of an entrepreneur and a characteristic of an entrepreneur. And statement 2 is also false. It's current assets minus inventory divided by current liabilities. Great stuff. Shall we have a look at the next one? So two statements again. All you need to do is decide whether the statements are true or false. So product orientation involves designing products based around customers' needs and wants. So again, this ties to the clothing industry. Lots of clothing manufacturers do design their clothes based around customer needs and wants. Some design them around what they believe will sell. And saturated markets are an example of a push factor. What do we think? Are those true or false? So the majority are going for A and C. So that means most of us think statement 2 is true, but we're not sure about statement 1. What do we think? Oh, excuse me. What do we think? So the majority are going for C. What do you think the answer is? Can we reveal the answer? Yeah, it is C. So it's not product orientation, it's market orientation. That involves designing products, in this case, clothing maybe, based around customers' needs and wants. Whereas saturated markets are an example of a push factor. Great stuff. Shall I have a look at the next? I think we're moving on to our next activities are completely random spinner. So all we want you to do is whatever it lands on, and remember it is random. We've got no idea what it's going to land on. And whatever it does land on, you just need to give 2 features or elements. So if it lands on benefits of growth, 2 benefits of growth. So John, can we start the completely random spinner, please? Wow. Benefits of market segmentation. So can you, in the chat there, give us 2 benefits of market segmentation? What do we think? So 2 benefits of market segmentation. So you may get a question such as assess the value of market segmentation to a clothing retailer such as Next. Maybe Next do segment the market. I don't shop there myself, so I couldn't comment on that, but maybe they do. So Sultan Pepper, what a really what a really cool name. So Sultan Pepper says, and I've lost it because it was so many. It was really good wherever it was, but it disappeared because there were so many more targeted promotional strategies. That's a really good one. By sort of picking a specific segment, the business can target that segment with more focused marketing. We've got maybe identifying niches and suit market needs and wants, altering the marketing mix for different demographics. That's good. Able to meet customer needs and specialize and focus on the target market. There's some really, really good answers there. So remember, Edexcel questions, especially in paper 3, are all about balance. So if you get a question such as assess the value of market segmentation to a clothing retailer such as Next, you would have to maybe say why it's a value, then counter that why it may not be a value, then an overall decision as to whether it is or is not of value in the context of the business you are writing about. So shall we reveal our answers? So very similar to what was in the chat window there, develop products and services for specific segments and more focused marketing. Does anyone want to have a go in the chat window of maybe giving a potential downside of market segmentation? What do we think? So if it was assess the benefit, you would give a benefit, then you would give maybe a disadvantage. So what could a business miss out on? Yeah, it could be. It could be time consuming in terms of targeting and researching specific segments. Yeah, that's a really good one. Cannot target mass market sales. Limited customer base. That's an interesting one, and that's a really good point. A lot of segments are quite small, but some segments can be very profitable and quite large. Good point there about maybe missing out on other segments if you're only targeting one or two. So same maths there, may miss opportunities, less volume of sales. So remember, whenever you get a question that asks you to assess, you must give a balanced response. Okay, should we have a look at one more of these? So we can see the benefits of market segmentation has been grayed out. Let's find out what it's going to land on. Wow. Now, I wasn't expecting that. So let's hope that the AI system has chosen some answers for us to go through. So what do we think? Factors influencing demand. Central C, why is no one worthy on screen today? I think that's a bit harsh, to be fair. I think that's a bit of a harsh comment. I'll overlook that one. Factors influencing demand. So can someone give me 2 factors influencing demand? What do we think? So again, you might get a question, assess whether a factor is the most important factor when influencing demand for a clothing retailer such as Primark. So we've got price, consumer income, availability of substitutes, fashion, age, advertising, seasonality. That's a great one. Seasonality is a really, really important one. And that ties in nicely, doesn't it, with paper 3, which is on the clothing industry. So some clothing retailers are highly, or their clothes are highly seasonal. We've got consumer trends and preferences. Quality is a good one. Quality is a really, really important one. So quality could affect demand and the quantity demanded. Yeah, seasonality again. Elasticity. Shall I have a look at what the specification says? So that's what's on the specification. So changes in the prices of substitute stroke complementary goods, changes in consumer incomes, fashions, tastes and preferences. External shocks is a really good one. Advertising and branding demographics, external shocks and seasonality. So let's now just do a quick overview of the paper for 5 minutes, and then we'll spend 5 minutes just taking a few questions. Remember, this is a gentle warm-up, not intended to scare anyone. That frees you up for the rest of the afternoon to do a little bit of revision. So, paper 3. So we have done 2 live streams previously on paper 3. So in one of them, we do go through the structure in far more detail if you want to check our playlist on Edexcel A-Level Business 2024. So the paper's slightly different in the fact it's synoptic, so you could get questions from 1, 2, 3, and 4. There are 2 sections. with each section consisting of an 8-mark question, a 10-mark question, a 12-mark question, and a 20-mark question. So you should already know this. There are no 4-mark questions on paper 3. They've been replaced by an 8-mark question because I think 2 4s equal 8. So the 4-mark questions have been replaced by an 8-mark question. So we've got some top tips for tomorrow. So remember, 8-mark questions do not need a supported judgment at the end, but your assessment must be balanced. So all 8-mark questions will ask you to assess 2. So in an 8-mark question, you must provide counter arguments to the 2 points you are making. So if it's assess 2 benefits of market segmentation to a retailer such as Primark, you would give a benefit, then a counter argument, then another benefit, then another counter argument, and that's it. You do not need a conclusion or judgment at the end of your response. So there's someone just asking, is it worth doing any past papers for paper 3? Well, the exam's tomorrow, to be fair. But if you wanted to do some sort of have a look at the type of questions that have appeared before, they are still of value, even though the pre-release is different, because the question structure will still be the same and the topics will still be similar. So it is worth having a look at maybe what came up or the types of questions that came up last year. So in 10 and 12-mark questions, your answer must be balanced, and you'll know this because you've already done paper 1 and paper 2. So the 10 and 12-mark questions on paper 1 and paper 2 are exactly the same as paper 3. So in a 10 and 12-mark question, you must provide a balanced answer and must have a conclusion or support the judgment at the end. So Alex, you've made, because I'm struggling to keep up with so many questions in the chat, I'm trying to pick out one. So Alex here, what do you recommend to do when a wordy maths question comes up and you don't? John, I think if we can just go back on that slide, I had one more slide to go through, if that's all right. Yeah, so if a wordy, I'm not sure what you mean by a wordy maths question, but I think what you mean possibly is if a question asks you or infers you need to make a calculation as part of a 12 marker. So it might say, using the data in extract B, the payback period and the average rate return, assess a business's investment. That's telling you to use the average rate return and payback. So you may have to calculate those. So you would calculate the average rate return and then calculate payback at the start. Then you must use the results of those calculations in the body of your response. So don't just do the calculations. Make sure you use the results of the calculations in your answer. So say in a 20-mark question, maybe you are given some sales data and you have to work out some moving averages. You would need to use the moving averages in the body of your response. And the structure you've used previously wouldn't change just because it's calculations. You wouldn't be expected to write as much because the calculations are going to take a little bit of time, but you would still use the same structure you used previously. Just make sure you use the results of the calculations within your answer. Use the results of the calcs to support your analysis and evaluation whilst picking up those vital application marks. So in terms of how much do you write? Well, again, you're working on a mark a minute, you're still only expected to write maybe for a 12-mark question, 12 minutes. So there's marks available for the calculations. So you obviously you can't write as much. So just bear that in mind. So in terms of the judgments and conclusions on 10 and 12 markers, really they should build on what you've already said, but try and add something new in there, something that adds value to your response. So again, lots of questions about the calculation questions in 20 mark. I've just answered that. So do your calculations at the start and just follow the same structure you've been using in paper 1 and paper 2 for the 20 markers, but make sure you try and use the results of your calculations within your answer. How likely is it that we will get 20 marker involving calculations? No idea. Unfortunately, I'm not Darren Brown, whatever that means. I think he can predict the future. But they've appeared before. If you have a look at some of the paper 3 past papers, if you're going to get calculations as part of a question, it's more likely to be 12 and 10. Sorry, 12. Sorry, not 10 mark questions. 12 and 20 mark questions because there's more marks available. Okay, so one more slide, I think. So in the 20 mark questions, again, they're asking you to evaluate. You must balance both options. So it will say, should a business choose option A and option B? Arguments for and against option A. Arguments for and against option B. Then a recommendation. Make sure you balance both options. Your recommendation needs to be more than a simple conclusion. And again, it should build on what you've already written, but go beyond that and add something new. And as we've covered in all of our paper 1 and our paper 2 and our previous paper 3 live streams, MOPS is a useful way to add context to your recommendation. So MOPS stands for market, objectives, products or service or situation. So maybe your recommendation is influenced by the market the business operates in. Okay, so what I'm going to do is for the next 5 minutes, because we've got so many questions, so many. So I'm just going to go through the chat window. So if you bear with me, because obviously, you know, I'm missing Starsky to my hutch, I'm missing Ant to my deck, and Laurel to my Hardy. So my sparring partner's not here. So I'm trying to go through the chat window. No, you don't have to use MOPS. MOPS is just a technique. So in terms of how do you write a conclusion, well, you've already been writing conclusions for paper 1 and paper 2. So if that technique you're currently using works, then just continue using, you know, that method. Make a decision, justify a decision, tell the examiner why you've come to that decision, but try and add something new. In terms of MOPS, MOPS is just a technique to try and, you know, make your recommendation a little bit more contextualized. So it stands for market, objectives, product or service, and situation. So maybe your recommendation is influenced by the situation the business finds itself in, its economic situation, or maybe its financial situation. Maybe it's influenced by the objectives of the business. So about the 8 mark questions, loads of questions coming in about the 8 markers. So what I'll try and do is I'll just try and give some generic advice. So if the question is assess 2 benefits, that's really asking you to evaluate 2 benefits, isn't it? It's an assessment of the benefits. So if it's assess 2 benefits of market segmentation to Primark, an argument as to why it's a benefit, then a counter argument in context, then another benefit, then another counter argument. That way you fully assessed both benefits. If it's assessed 2 effects, give 1 effect, then counter that, then another effect, then another counter. So lots of techniques and acronyms in the chat window, really. I'm not limited to comment on the effectiveness of them all because some I've not heard of. But whatever you've been using for paper 1 and paper 2, you know, stick with it. Stick with it. Just remember that in an 8 mark question. So lots of questions still coming on about the AQA live stream. I think I've answered it several times. Unfortunately, we're not doing an AQA live stream today. It was recorded yesterday and is on our YouTube channel, so you can watch that. So you can watch that paper 3 overview. So again, looking at, so there's a question about the pre-release. I can't find it. Should I at this stage just spend time looking at what potential topics could come up? Yeah, I think since the exam's tomorrow, that's a good point. Maybe go through all the bullets and think, actually, you know, we know entrepreneurship's on there, so be familiar with characteristics of an entrepreneur, roles of an entrepreneur to leader. Well, questions, that one on screen there, mate, it's a good question. Well, questions are drawn from all 4 themes, but the context of those questions or your extracts will be based on the pre-release. So the pre-release is on clothing, retail, and manufacturing. So you're not going to get a question asking you to assess the value of market segmentation to a food on the go business such as Greggs, because Greggs at the moment doesn't sell clothes. Well, then again, they do those shorts in Primark, don't they? But you wouldn't class Greggs as a clothing retailer. So the questions will be drawn from, the topics will be drawn from the themes, but the context will be the clothing industry. So just gonna quickly go through and see. There's so many questions. So I'm just trying to pick out ones that I think is going to benefit people the most. About using your own research, if you've done some research and it adds value to your response, then of course, by all means, use it. Remember, your questions are going to be based on an extract. So you might get an extract on, say, Primark, and the question will relate to Primark. But if you can support your answer and it adds value to your answer by bringing in some of your own research, yes, of course, you can use it. Yeah, that's absolutely fine. So how would you answer a question about MNCs being useful? Well, it depends on the question. So again, you just want to make sure that your answer is relevant to the business in the extract. Don't write just textbook answers. Make sure you're using the extract to pull out those really important pieces of context. Okay, so that's how you would do that. So Zineb, for 12 and 10 markers, do we have to write a little however for each point and then a conclusion, or one positive and one negative? You could do either, as long as there's balance. As long as there's balance in there. So if it was, say let's do a 12-mark question. Assess the value of break-even to an independent clothing retailer such as Pryor's Clothing. So that's a made-up clothing retailer. So assess the value or break-even analysis or break-even to Pryor's Clothing. So you'd give an argument as to why it's of value, then an argument as to why it may not be of value, then a conclusion. That's one way. There's your balance. Some students may decide to do one reason why it's of value, then a short however argument, then a counter argument as to why it's not of value, then a however argument. Just be careful of time management. As long as there's balance, there's not a set way of answering the questions. Examiners are just looking for balanced arguments. So Sarah there is saying, why is everyone talking about calculation questions as a 12 marker? Previously, some of the questions in paper 3, particularly the 12 and the 20 markers, have asked students to maybe perform some calculations as part of them. So what you would need to do there is, if it's saying something like, and I'll use the example, that I've used before, using extract A, the payback period and the average rate return, assess whether Primark should, continue with this investment. Then you would do your calculations at the start and use the results of the calculations within your answer. Of course, you're not expected to write as much because, you're doing calculations part of it, but you must ensure that you use the results of those calculations within your answer. So does section A and B focus on particular themes? It's something I've never actually noticed. It just draws questions from all 4 themes. So you can't really predict it. But the good thing is you've already sat paper 1, which covers themes 1 and 4. You've sat paper 2, which covers themes 2 and 3. So there should be no surprises on there. The secret for paper 3 really is making sure you get the 8-mark questions done well, because you'll have not done those on paper 1 and paper 2, and you make sure your answer is applied to the context in the extract. Okay, I think we've got about 1 minute left. I'll try and pick out on. So Grace is saying, if you got a calculation question in section A, could you get another one in section B? I suppose you could, but it wouldn't matter really if they come up. You just need to make sure you do the calculation and use the results of that calculation in your answer. So some questions about how to structure 12 markers. So Sophie, if you just want to maybe watch this recording again, because I've just covered it, so maybe you've just logged on and maybe you missed that. So I did cover a potential structure for 12-mark questions, and I've also, if you look at our paper 3 live streams previously, we've done 2. Then I cover that as well. So I'm having a look here about I'm having a look at some which I can pick out, which I think is going to give students. There's so many questions coming in. I could be on all day, couldn't I? Answering all these. Great questions, though. Keep them coming. Yeah. So No, there's not. Someone's saying there's 4 mark calculation questions on paper 3. There isn't. So I don't know how else to say that really. There are no 4-mark questions on paper 3. So there's none. There's only 8-mark questions. So incorrect. So you're not going to get any 4-mark questions. Someone's saying, could capacity utilization be mentioned again? Yeah, just because it may have come up on a previous paper doesn't mean it can't come up again. So for example, last year exchange rates came up on paper 2 and paper 3. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to answer this one last question because I think it's really, really, really important. Then I'm going to do an emotional goodbye because it's our last live stream together. Unless some of you are deciding to stay on and become a year 14 student. So the question was, what's the difference between a 10 and 12-mark question? So we will finish on this. So the difference, apart from the fact that there's 2 marks difference, is the knowledge marks are exactly the same and the application marks are the same, but there's 1 mark extra for analysis and evaluation. And in the descriptors, which examiners look at, and you can have a look at them on the Edexcel website yourself, in the level descriptors, there's a word wide ranging. So there's an expectancy that your analysis and evaluation will be a little bit more developed when compared to a 10-mark question, because there's an extra mark for analysis and there is an extra mark for evaluation. Okay, so Chloe there, so I'm going to leave it on this. So Chloe said, this is our last ever live stream. Please put my message on. So John, can we put Chloe X's message on there if we can find it? It's just under, just above Dream Boys. There you go, Chloe. We always aim to please. So we've done a lot of live streams. We've been on a really emotional roller coaster together, and I hope you've picked up 1 or 2 things that you've found useful. We've really, really, really enjoyed doing them, and it's unfortunate that Jim can't be with us for our last one, but family comes first. So thank you for taking part. Thank you for getting involved. Can I use the word banter? Do students still use the word banter, John? I don't know. But thank you for the banter and the crack. It's been very, very, very welcome. We've really enjoyed them. So all it leaves me to say is good luck tomorrow. Relax. Do your best. The result will be what the result will be. Paper 1 and paper 2 have gone. You've done the hard work. Thank you for joining us, and good luck for the future. Thank you very much.